All right, the March 6th meeting of the Rockport School Committee is now in session. This is being broadcast live and recorded for later broadcast. First item of business is the approval of minutes from February 7th. We were all here. Do we have any amendments to those minutes? Nope. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes of February 7th as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public comment follows, but we have no public here, so I'd say we're done with that. Dr. Branco, we have two pieces of correspondence in the drive.
We do, so in your drive, you have an email from Miss Diane O'Connor, which was sent to the school committee box. And so it was a concerned parent around the fourth grade class size related to the budget and staffing. So I just want to recognize publicly that we've received the email, and with direction from the chair, I will reply on behalf of the school committee tied to the budget and let her know that we've discussed it here and that we're debating mitigating circumstances at this point. The second one is a follow-up to Mr. Ken Knoll's emails, concerned citizen on the corner of Upper Main Street around a bus stop there. As you can see, we had gone back and forth a couple times in correspondence. Mr. and Mrs. Knowles did actually come in and meet with me. We had a great meeting in my office to discuss this, and I think I heard their points and understood their concerns. They have a unique perspective owning that house right there, where they literally have a window to the chaos of that particular intersection. So we discussed that, to discuss the options that the parents in that neighborhood actually already have been able to avail themselves to going to an alternate bus stop, and explain that we would, again, discuss it tonight, and just so that he knew, I let you know that we're meeting, and that I would work with the police department and the transportation directors again in the summer to make sure we take a look at our routes.
Did you say that parents in that neighborhood have an option to walk to a different stop so that they don't need to cross the street?
Correct, I can go down to Pools Lane.
I think that's just important
Yep.
for somebody new to understand, that somebody could avoid that by
Yep.
walking.
Yep.
Thank you.
And then, Dr. Branco, maybe a follow-up to a question, or a follow-up question we got last night at the Finance Committee meeting. We had a resident, Toby Arsenian, come in with a letter and a large list of questions, and he was promised a response, and last night at the Finance Committee meeting, he asked me what the progress on that was. So that note was handwritten, and there are some questions that are better answered by the school committee, some that are better answered by the business manager or the superintendent. So I actually took the time personally to digitize this, and we have a shared document between the superintendent and the business manager, and we're going through, taking turns answering that. So he will get a response from the school committee, which the Finance Committee Chair, Dwight Valentine, asked that we share with that group as well, because if the same questions come up on the floor of town meeting during the budget presentation, they want to avail themselves of those answers. Most of the questions are already contained in the budget handbook, but there are a few perennial items that come up relative to how we're holding our state representatives accountable. So it's going to be nice to get all of that into one package, and we'll get that out to Toby. All right, so then personnel, I think we have 5 or 6.
Yep, so we have a few personnel updates tonight. Ms. Drea Bush has resigned from her position of a 4.0 Spanish and .6 ELL teacher, and so we thank Ms. Bush for her service to the Rockport Public School District. Ms. Emily Shearer has resigned from her position of RMS interventionist, and we thank her as well for her time and dedication. Emma Hensler will be taking maternity leave starting March 6th, and it feels every time I see her that it could be sooner and sooner. So we wish Emma the best of luck with her growing family, and I believe she's taking the full year leave, and then will return to us for the following school year. So congratulations to Emma and growing family. Ms. Peggy Lyman has resigned from her position of elementary school special education teacher. Peggy was on leave this year and is pursuing other employment options. And we are welcoming Rowan Lampert, hired as a long-term sub at the high school English. And Rowan will be transitioning with Ms. Hensler, I think already is happening, correct? So that's happening right now to just try to ease Mr. Lampert into the position and the students into the transition as well. So a lot of moving parts in the past month or so, but we feel like we have it under control and are in good shape now.
Good. We don't have a student advisory committee rep here.
I think they either held a meeting, I believe there was a meeting tonight, and then secondarily, the varsity boys basketball team. If you don't want to watch this
Right.
on TV, you can watch it on YouTube right now. And my guess is many students are occupied with that as well today, so.
Excellent. You're in the auditorium. That's
Yes.
great. And I think since our last meeting, the Drama Llamas advanced the Mass Educational Theater
did they
Guild
advance?
semifinals.
Okay.
And,
No, they did not.
They did not
oh, they
advance.
did not advance.
They did
Sorry,
not advance.
that's
They performed well.
Performed well, but
We
did
had,
not
It's great. We had a lot of individual,
Right.
a lot of individual awards.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe we had 2 acting awards. I believe we had a costume design award and makeup award as well. Those are the 4
Yes.
I'm aware of. So congratulations to them. And I did go to the show Friday night. They did a preview for us locally before the first varsity basketball game on Friday, and it was super funny. It's a really funny show. The kids were really energetic, and the students that won the awards. And I'll make sure we come back to the next meeting with the names. I don't want to do it off the top of my head.
Jacob Timmons won an acting award.
Jacob Timmons won an acting award,
Award for makeup, and Mia Sargent also.
and Mia Sargent for makeup as well. So thank you.
Lauren O'Connor won an acting award
Right.
as well, I believe.
Yep, yep, I think that is true, you're right. So congratulations, the show was super funny, a lot of work goes into those competition plays. And as a fine arts person, it's funny to put the word competition in front of anything that's performing or visual arts related. But we look at these as really good educational opportunities for our fine and performing arts students to kind of just get a lay of the land off the island, really feel what the rest of Massachusetts looks like from a theatrical landscape, and to really steal some ideas and compare and contrast our skill sets and growth. So it's a good learning opportunity, as opposed to just making it about the competitive aspect of it. So congratulations to our theater department.
so it wasn't the semifinals, but they did go into Boston and got to have the experience with the multiple.
Andover.
They
Andover.
went to Andover for the first round with the.
Yeah,
bunch of
first round in
students.
Andover.
Yeah, and they had a great time. and-
Collins Center, I think, in Andover.
Subcommittee updates. Do we have a policy subcommittee update?
We finally had a meeting, now that budget slowed down, and
So we did meet. We've continued our review of Section E, which is on support services. Non-instructional support services is what it is, like transportation, building and grounds. We're still continuing with that section. We have 3 other sections after this one to go through. So our goal is to go through all of those sections this year, and bring all those to the full committee. So that's what we're working on. I know we're counting. It's getting there. Yeah, we may be adding some subcommittee dates to our schedule to get that done, but that's our goal, yeah.
And it's really been fast. I mean, that's a huge amount of work to plow
Yeah.
through.
It is a lot. I don't know, any other details you want to add? No? Okay.
Nothing. Unfinished business.
none at this time, Mr.
Not
Chair.
at this time. Okay, so that would bring us to new business, and I believe first up is an update on the high school master's schedule.
That is correct. So let me just pull, is that what we have up there first? I don't have it in front of me. Yes, okay.
you.
Thank you, thank you. I do, come on up. So I'm going to have Principal Rose with us tonight. Amy and I co-chaired the committee. Jeff Rodman started co-chairing with us before he left us in the fall, so I'd like to publicly thank Jeff for his input and support at the beginning of this cycle. And on the slide here, you'll see that we had a really nice representative team. So I have done this, I think I said this to the team, I've done this numerous times as a consultant, either on my own or through the New England League of Middle Schools, to go out and work with school districts to do this work. I've never never, ever successfully led a group through a complete overhaul in a 6-month or less period. I have often been called back in the 18th month because there's still some kind of trial and tribulation getting in the way of the work. So I really applaud this particular group. Amanda King, Whitney Day, Anne-Marie Luster, Caroline Teague, Keith McCarthy, Carrie Herman, Aidan McCarthy, not related to Keith McCarthy, Ruth Price, Eric Vent, Sarah Linskis, Jenny Sonia, Martha Cox Stavros, and Nathan Cohen. Really nice representative group. We had people from either every grade level or content area, as well as a cross-section of specialists. And so you have here in front of you that we had really laid out the landscapes for our format. It was a representative group of middle and high school leaders. They met asynchronously as a full team and in multiple occasions in different versions of small group sessions. The full team came together for 3 two-hour sessions, and a lot of members worked individually and collectively on the side in between those sections. Our ultimate goal was to collaboratively develop a new RMHS master schedule that maintains the middle school model for young adolescents and also provides our older students with a comprehensive high school experience. That's a really nice, put together, simple, packaged one sentence. And the reality of that one sentence is not as simply packaged. So you have a lot of moving parts when you have a 6 to 12 school and when you want to run kind of this 2 schools within a school feel. And the diverse needs of young adolescents versus young adults are drastically different. So Ms. Rose will get into that in a little bit when we look at the schedule. And we really wanted to tie into our core values and talk about focusing on developing a values-driven, student-centered schedule that allowed us to focus on high expectations and wellness and integrity and sense of belonging and remaining creative and innovative in our scheduling process. So this slide was kind of the slide that we used to open up every one of our meetings and just sort of go back and check ourselves at the door, so to speak, to make sure we were all on the same page when we did the work. We had this laundry list of things to consider, and we kind of boiled it down. And so I won't read this whole list to you as you have it in front of you, but there are a couple highlights on here. Ironically, coming out of budgeting season, we talked about how scheduling is like budgeting, and you really have to prioritize. That second bullet is one that I like to drive home all the time, that a school schedule is really a series of value judgments that affect the educational lives of students. And so some of us, when you schedule long enough, and Amy has this experience too, you can look at another school schedule and you can quickly make some determinations about what they value, what they don't value, what drove the bus, so to speak, and how they built the schedule. And so we had some really philosophical, values-driven conversations before we did a single thing with chart papers or anything else. We talked about how every school is unique, so it's not as simple as let's go out, just do 6 site visits, look at 7 schedules, and just take one. It doesn't really work that way because of the size of every different school and the population of its staff, and again, the values that they have. And that last bullet is a super important one. We just talked about the importance of living a master schedule for a little while. We know there are going to be bumps. We know that scheduling is never done, but this was a massive, massive overhaul, and I'm really proud of the work that this team has put together. Amy, do you mind? I'll do this with you. Just stepping through these a little bit. Yeah. We did a really good activity around must-haves, ought-to-haves, and nice-to-haves. And so I tried to put that together in one slide, just so you could take a quick look at what really drove us. And on the right-hand side of this, a little bit of real, authentic quotes and narrative that came out of this activity. So if you want to just step through like the must-haves, I think it'd be neat to talk. Can you see it from there?
Yeah, kind of.
Kind of?
Although my eyes are, yeah. Yes, I can. No, I think that the process that we took as a team was really helpful, especially as I'm getting to know somebody who's done master scheduling at the high school for a long time, has not done master scheduling at the middle school as much. Even that in of itself, as I go to schedule middle school next year, I think was really helpful to have the opportunity to hear from the teachers themselves about what they feel are the most important things, and then what collectively, like, we were able to dissect together and have them realize, like, some of them they're all really important, but some of them are just maybe more nice to haves than must-haves after we came to, have conversations around them. But I think the biggest thing beyond making sure that we could meet the team model of the middle school while also having enough blocks at the high school to have a drop block, which would allow us to have 7 blocks of courses. We had at first been looking at, okay, if we're going to need to have 6 at the middle, then we're only going to be able to have 6 at the high school. And that would really, really limit high school scheduling because we're already limited. If we have students who are taking music or, want to take an art class, are on IEPs and need an academic support, and then you have 5 English, math, science, social studies, Spanish, 1 block is really not enough to have a comprehensive high school schedule. So we had a lot of conversations about what that could look like, maintaining the team model at the middle school, For me, and I think others, thankfully, a big push was around having some sort of common either assembly time, advisory time, win time, time for us to come together and build culture, have a strong social emotional curriculum that is 6 through 12 and not just in pockets, to really complement the health curriculum. If we're talking about building a stronger culture, we need time to dedicate to that. Intervention and enrichment blocks were a big thing because we talk a lot about taking data, having data, then what do we do with the data? And if we don't have time to have the interventions and we're relying just on the general ed teachers or special educators to do that, it's not really feasible. So we talked a lot about what that would look like. We talked about the strengths of the senior internship program and how we really wanted to be able to maintain that. However, we also found that there could be areas that we could improve upon it, make it a little bit more comprehensive, make it more something that is more consistent across all students. So right now we have many students who have amazing experiences with internships, but we have some that have less stellar internship experiences just because a lot of the onus is on the students to get those internships and maintain them. So we wanted to see how we could keep the good aspects of that, but also, adjust it slightly. We talked about the length of the blocks being about 50 to 60 minutes long in length. And it was really good to have the science teachers in that conversation because I will say that shifted drastically. We went from we need a longer than that lab block at least once a cycle because we have AP Bio and we have AP Chem and we really need these longer blocks to actually coming back and saying, we never really finish maybe one whole lab in that time anyway. Sometimes, or either we do and we could consolidate, or sometimes they're stretched over several days, or sometimes, we can adjust. And it was a great conversation. Aiden, being on the committee, went back to the science department, came back and said, no, that's actually not a must-have after we talked about it. So that was a good point of discussion. We talked about having world language 6 through 12 if possible, but even 7 through 12, just making sure we could have that continuity starting in the middle school. A lot of conversation about having a comprehensive PE wellness program because, as you know, the standards for health and wellness have changed, and we're really looking to make sure that we're implementing them in an effective manner. Currently at the high school level, all of our students don't get PE just because even though we try to get them in with scheduling issues, they don't always fit. So we talked about how we could make that work and just leveraging staff. So as we know that, in some areas we're declining in numbers, we want to make sure that we're able to utilize staff to the best of our ability if we need to across grades and across hopefully not subject areas, but across grades in schools so that we, don't have to necessarily look to, eliminate staff. We can just look to move and change and shift. So we really looked at that, and I think that's one of the best things about this schedule is in leading a 6 through 12 building, having some shared ability to schedule staff will be amazing because right now we are literally functioning so separately that it's almost impossible to share staff. We do it, but it's not easy or pretty. And I think there was a lot of consensus around all those areas. And then as Mark's laid out, the ought to haves and the nice to haves were things that had come up at some point as like, we must have these. And then through discussion, a lot of them changed and said those would be really nice things to have, but maybe they're not as necessary as our must haves list. And I don't know, Mark, if you want to go through all of those or.
No, I think that's good. I think what's important for the committee to see and the community to see is that what you're seeing here is literally 2 whole meetings or a meeting and a half before we even drafted anything. We spent a lot of time brainstorming, philosophizing, building our values, and really aligning so that once the 15 or 18 people on the team started to do the actual work, we were all sort of like-minded at that point, which was really nice because I've experienced, the opposite of that in some work groups in the past. So this is the pretty version. So you do not have to memorize this or even understand it.
Might be a test, I don't know.
But there's no test. So this is. I will talk at the 10,000-foot level, and then Amy will talk about authentic application and some of the major wins of the schedule. Right out of the gate, if you don't know this, we didn't even have a 6 to 12 schedule that aligned our clocks and our blocks. So we had it was like having two different schools 10 miles away.
Well, and even in the middle school, there were three
different-
different schedules
correct.
and different times that they.
Thank you.
rotated. So,
Yes, anytime you, yeah,
Not
just
just,
jump in, right.
yeah, not just.
So
middle and high school.
the big win right out of the gate is this concept of first block, second block, third block, right? So if kids need to ebb and flow, if we need to have something rotate all at the same time, when we have shared staff, particularly at the middle and the high school level, that Amy's not locked into saying, well, I can only use teacher X this period of the day at the high school because they're tied into the middle school. So what you see here is, there's a long name. It's a rotating 6-day, which means we've got 6-day cycles instead of 5. First period is locked. That is a strategic decision so that we can leverage staff who potentially we can have teach at the elementary level or elementary up to the middle high school. So, for example, we currently have instrumental music teachers who travel down to the elementary, and part of their 1.0 assignment is to teach at the elementary school in the morning. I believe we also have an art teacher at the elementary school
Who teaches at the high
who
school.
comes up to the high school and teaches a high school course as 2.2 of her 1.0. So if you don't lock at least one block a day, and the whole school rotates, they can only meet that elementary school time once every 6 days. And so by locking it, it's going to really allow us to maximize over time any usage of faculty and staff where we feel like they have the ability, licensure, expertise to cross down or up across the K-12 spectrum. Big win there.
So Mark, locking means
If you're,
it doesn't, yeah.
correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Doesn't rotate.
It doesn't
Okay.
rotate, right. So, right, every day everybody comes in and a block is the same. So then if you look at the rest of the schedule, and I'll just stay in 6th grade, so we're all looking at the same thing, then we start with that rotation of B, C, D, E, F. And then at the middle school, there is no drop. This was another big win for us. Middle school teachers were really passionate about not dropping one block for continuity purposes, to make sure they had maximize as much contact time with children over the 181 school days as possible. So by not dropping the block, that allows us to see all of our classes every single day. But if you go back to one of our must-haves, the very first one was that we wanted a schedule that recognizes that students, and I would argue adults also, are not always available to learn or at their best at the same time. As a matter of fact, the research says anybody who knows me personally knows I'm not a good morning person, and I just theoretically get better as the day goes on. That's debatable, but that's what I believe. So by, let's say I was already a low self-esteem math kid, or just a, math aptitude low, and I had math every day first period, that can be problematic for me. Similarly for professionals who start or end differently. So by doing this, that rotation allows us to hit kids and adults at different peak times of the school day, which is really important to us. When you look over to the 9 through 12, you're going to see that is a 7-period rotating one drop. So, and now if you look at the column 1 in the 9 to 12, you'll see A is locked again, then you'll see B, C, D, E, F, and then you'll see G come up on the next one, and then B, C, D, E, and F is dropped. So believe it or not, kids figure it out the first time through. The adults in the world, it takes a little bit of time, but kids are pretty adaptive. And so the kids will get it, and the rest of us will have it posted and charted and tattooed, or however else we need to remember stuff. But that's the philosophy behind the one drop. And as Principal Rose said earlier, it also allows us to provide anywhere between 7 and 9 course offerings, depending if they're taking semester courses or year-long courses. To remain competitive at our high school level, we have to be able to offer high-functioning students 7 to 9 classes to be able to really give them a robust opportunity. Another big win that Amy talked about is if you see that flex block in the middle, the whole school has it at the same time. She smiles every time we say it out loud. So you can do literally an all-school community meeting. You could have grade-level community meetings. You could have them done by content. You could have them topical. You could go into an advisory or a win model. You could have, we will be able to leverage departmental time. The high school does not have similar common planning time to the middle school model, and so it's often difficult currently to get the whole English team together regularly, other than a contractual once-a-month meeting. So this will allow the principal and the leadership team to be really flexible in how they deploy staff and students across that spectrum during that time. And NESDEC and DESE are really looking for these kind of blocks. They're looking for us to be able, that is time on learning, it's part of your advisory model, if you build a win block in. So this is not locked in, but this is an example of how it could work. You could have Monday could be an advisory day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday could be a win, Friday could be assembly, and Amy could build a whole schedule for the school and also rotate teachers in and out of that block to provide them with some kind of coverage to do planning and content work. So really, really nice opportunity, and we're going to experiment with Flex Block. I would expect all year that Amy will be working with the faculty to try to make that a really powerful moment. We've gone from 4 lunches to 3. That's how we were able to get the flex block to happen. And with declining enrollment, it's obviously less problematic, and we don't have to offer 4 lunches. So we will have some crossed lunches. You'll see that the 6th and 7th grade will have lunch together. Then you'll see that the 8th graders and some high school students will have lunch together. And then you'll see that there'll be a second high school lunch called L2. That's what L1, L2, and L3 are in the middle. And it's unavoidable when you have a 3-lunch model, someone gets a split block. Happens a lot. Less bothersome when you have a rotating and a drop schedule, because every class gets split in a 6-day cycle. So there's an equity balance there, and when you address time on learning that I have to turn into DESE, time on learning is actually even too. So we understand that that's a concern. We understand that some faculty members have brought it up. But when we look at all of the wins that this schedule gives us, we believe that that's one of those consequences that we are going to have to tolerate at that point. And then I think that kind of covers the functionality of the schedule. Any big wins you can think of that I'm missing?
No, I mean, you said it, but just to reiterate, there's some flexibility in the A block too. Because you'll notice that in the middle school schedule, the A block meets every single day, which is fine because all their blocks meet every day. In the high school, A block meets every day, but not every other block drops. So it actually gives me some leverage, which I'm happy about, to be able to provide for my teachers, to be able to pick one of those A blocks, maybe day 3, and have another sort of flex period built in at the high school level where I can give my teachers common planning time, because as Mark said, they never ever have had it at really, we tried to build it into U Block and we've tried to do the best we can, but giving them sort of uninterrupted time will be great. And then we'll have to come up with a different, experience for what that looks like for the kids. But I think that that's where we can have another win in the high school, to be able to provide teachers with common planning time and give students another flex type experience through either advisory or win. The biggest, I think, win for me is that flex advisory block, because trying to build that culture 6 through 12 is really difficult when you don't have access to the students often enough. And I think a part of that too will be building in advisory, assembly, and also peer mentoring opportunities, because the entire school will be free. So it'll make it much easier to look at everything proactively and pair up, say, 9th graders with 6th graders and 10th graders with 7th graders, and and have those, like, we've been talking about that for a long time, but scheduling wise, it's like almost been impossible to really make it happen.
Miles on our own
So,
basis,
yeah.
talking about a buddy system where,
Yeah.
you've got 6th graders paired up with 10th graders and 7th grade with 12th graders, and what that could look like from a mentor-mentee standpoint for kids and how powerful that could be. So just to think about the possibilities of that block are really exciting.
So in the 8th through 12th grade lunchtime, how full is it in lunch block 3?
Actually, you're just gonna do we're probably gonna do a 2/3, 1/3, or even less than that. So what you're gonna do is, let's say there's 50 kids in 8th grade, and I'm gonna do simple math for Branco math. If there's 50 seats in there, and there's 100 seats total, and 50 kids are in, then you're gonna put 50 more high school kids in, and then the high school lunch has whoever's
Will be
left at the high
split
school,
off.
yeah. So basically, you populate it with 8th grade first,
Okay.
and then you fill whatever, let's say there's 40 seats left, that's how many, if there's 30 seats left, that's how many high school students.
Okay.
So
The other-
that becomes flexible.
Yeah, and the other thing we did talk about is right now there's senior privileges to not necessarily eat in the cafeteria where they eat in the senior room, or we've talked about longer term revamping, our library spaces or other spaces to make it more of a kind of communal feel. I'm not sure we're there yet, but we definitely have talked about that. And I think in order to make this work, we'd have to continue to probably allow seniors to not always eat in the cafeteria
Yeah.
because they don't typically. I mean, some of them, they're allowed to, but a lot of them will eat elsewhere, and that does help with our numbers. So if most of them are not eating in the caf, then we can more evenly divide the numbers between 8 through 11.
If you've been in any new schools in Massachusetts for any events, in all of the new MSBA-built schools, it looks like Starbucks. They've got the high-top tables with the chargers built in them. They're in big glass lobbies. They're in hall areas. Some students will take that opportunity, if they're allowed to have, a working lunch with a teacher that they're studying with or making up work. So I think Amy's vision of starting it at the senior privilege level is a really good one, and then trying to build a culture where, we're trusting, pockets of children to make good decisions around where they're eating and how they're eating, and so that it is pretty normed in all of the new buildings. We just, again, we're
Right.
talking about retrofitting, so to speak, our old buildings to meet the current educational model, I guess.
And the fall should be a good trial because the warmer weather is easier because the seniors typically eat outside anyway. When it gets hard is January when you don't have the outdoor space to make sure we have enough indoor space so people can eat.
I'm saying this to the public on purpose. That space outside our cafeteria is primed and ready for a makeover. Like, people with better landscaping and gardening skills than me, that could be a beautiful outdoor, picnic area, gazebo-covered space that becomes an outdoor flex for outdoor learning and lunches. And just right now, we just haven't had the capacity to get that done. But that space is like prime and ready.
I have one comment and one question. The first comment regards, if I'm correct, cafeteria tables are on the list for capital improvement dollars. And if that's, whenever that happens, that's the opportunity to think about those other cafeterias that we see around the state. It's a big opportunity. It of course requires chairs if you change the height of the tables, but, right, but that's a big opportunity if new furniture is coming. My other point is really very detailed, but when I look at the high school schedule with split classes, some students have 2 passing periods instead of 1. Will you have an issue with time on the clock for the state if you have some classes that start, go to lunch, and go back to class? You've added 10 minutes of, I'll stop there.
That's why our passing time is 2 minutes, and if you go back to this slide, that's why you see 2 minutes of passing time is enough. Be human and flexible.
Meaning, understand if somebody needed the restroom, they're going to walk in.
Yeah, the culture cannot be, it's been 2 minutes and 2 seconds and you're out of the room, and which now causes the kid to go get a pass, which now causes time on learning issues. So
Yep.
on paper, we're fully compliant.
So that 2-minute passing period allows you to do that? Thank you very much.
Yep.
Is, with the 3 lunches, can the cafeteria process the kids and the food and everything?
Yep. I mean, we're 30 or 40 less kids each year coming.
But you're pushing them into
Yep.
3 instead
Yep.
of 4,
Yep.
so
Yep.
I know sometimes there was a
Yeah.
problem getting through.
Yeah, so there's a perceived problem sometimes in the public versus the real problem, which is some students take a lot longer and
Well, yeah,
talk for
yeah.
15 minutes and then jump in line, or get 3 lunches. So my experience being in the lunchroom and talking to people who are in the lunchroom regularly is there's more of a perceived problem with, my kid only gets a 9-minute lunch versus the actual reality.
Well, and it's focus, and everybody who has kids knows that. tie
I
your
mean, we have
shoes,
middle
they-
schoolers that eat the whole lunch in 7 minutes, and we want them to go outside, right? So, yeah, that 30, 31-minute time frame is pretty much the sweet spot for us. If you look at those clock times, this was very strategic. 54. We even had a debate right on the first period. We don't have homeroom, but we still have the business of school, some attendance, some field trip collections, maybe an announcement here or there. So you add 2 or 3 extra minutes there to cover the business of opening school up. And then we do have that lunch period when you add the 30 and the 30 together, that every child has a 60 block in the middle. So you've got anywhere between 51 and 60-minute classes that will rotate. And so even the band director gets a 60-minute shot. So it's really kind of, with the rotation, it's really nice.
I just had a question and a comment. This might be a silly question. So flex block will replace like what's now U block
Right.
in the high school. So
Right.
no more U block, flex block all at the same time. And my comment was, this was great when I was looking through this. First of all, I've never totally understood the schedule. I'm glad my children understand it perfectly. And I look at it and go, great. But I think that when I was reading through like the must-haves and the nice-to-haves, they really aligned, there was consensus among the staff, but they've also really aligned with conversations that I've had in the community and with families for a lot of the same things. So it was really great to look at these and be like, wow, this is exactly some of the conversations that we've had about the schedule and about class offerings and, all of that. So I think that not only is it consensus in the staff, I think that families will really and kids will really, this will be great.
I mean, I can't say enough, I know Amy agrees with me, but I can't say enough that the thoughtfulness, the collaboration that the team put into it, and, everybody had the guts to ask tough questions of each other, too, and that to me, demonstrates a level of trust and a level of accountability and a hope for a shared experience on the other end. So we did have hard conversations in that room, even just on what column something lands in before we built anything. And then when we got to this level, it was, this is like, version 9 or 11, I think. I can't even tell you how many iterations this went through before I could even, build it, so.
And I think it was a true compromise. I mean, every master schedule I've ever been a part of, there's always some compromise, like the split lunch, that's a compromise. I mean, there's something that has to give to make it work, but I was excited because I feel like the things that we had really didn't want to give up about the high school schedule, some of the assembly, the the flex block, having those 7 blocks a day, like we didn't have to give up anything. One of the things that will be interesting, and I actually think is a bonus, but I have to get the kids to buy into the bonus, is that we haven't had in our current schedule, we rotate the morning blocks, we rotate the afternoon blocks. We do that because the way we share staff right now is cut off at 11:30, so I can schedule middle school in the morning and high school in the afternoon if we have shared staff. I think one of the major drawbacks of that is that you have, band who can only meet F block, and you have engineering classes that could only meet F block historically because they were shared staff. And so if you had a kid who wanted both, I couldn't schedule them in the morning. So this totally alleviates that. It also alleviates the internship model is going to have to shift and change, which we're going to get into when we talk about the new offerings, which I think will be a strength and a bonus. It will mean that the students can't leave in the middle of the day all year long, that we have to build it into the final quarter of the year. I think, again, and I think collectively we felt it will ultimately be a bonus because it will keep students in electives all day long, making our numbers higher in those classes, which they should be. I mean, a lot of times when half the school is leaving at 11 to go do internships, some which are really valuable and some that are not so much, you have elective numbers that are lower in the afternoon. And I think students will be able to take advantage of more of our class offerings, be here, be a part of the school community, and then we'll build those chances for internships into the final quarter of the year. Just sort of modeling after other schools who do it. Manchester Essex does it. We've had a chance to go over and look at their model, and I think they've really done a great job with how they run that. So again, the students, I think, are going to take a little adjusting to that. But I think overall it's going to open up some opportunities.
So any thoughts, comments, questions before we move to internships?
I know there was a representative group that built this,
Yep.
and clearly a lot of labor. Has there been any reaction from the teachers?
So we did a staff presentation, a combined staff presentation, and it felt good. We have one teacher here in the audience who I actually asked a question, I think, about lunch, if I remember correctly.
Split blocks, yeah.
I know you don't. So, but I just want to acknowledge that I do think, I think we put a lot of information in front of the faculty. There was an opportunity for Q&A, and I do know that Amy and the staff, the leadership team are going to dig in with faculty now as we start to develop the rotation of the coursework, what the electives will and won't be. And you're going to see some of that in a few minutes, the end of that result. But, and I think, and I believe this is what was happening, every time we left those meetings,
Right.
there was dissemination of information out in a lot of different ways from staff to staff, too. So then we kind of held that one big launch meeting, so to speak, to just give the full tutorial on it. And we did a very similar presentation that you're seeing tonight.
And I think it was a very authentic experience for the staff that were a part of it. So the feedback that has come my way is that even though, of course, with any master schedule, not everybody loves everything about it, I think people do feel like there was a lot of time and thought put into it by their colleagues too, to run the numbers, to make things better, to come back and be like, how can we do this? And I think some of it is just when you're aligning with the 2 schools and, 7 grades, just never going to have a perfect schedule, but there was a lot of time and energy that went into it by the teachers. And I think the other teachers appreciated and understood that that was kind of the best we could get. And I'm pretty impressed actually that we were able to get this, because it wasn't looking like, it looked like this. If you looked at it, maybe after the first or second session, colors wise, because this is the way Mark formats things, it looked similar. But there are so many changes that we made, over the course of the process.
I guess I would just ask one last question. Why was the decision made to put the split lunch at the high school level instead of at the 6th grade level?
We actually think older.
More kids?
No, we actually think older students are more cognitively available to stop and start. The little
I see.
kids are really more educationally not prepared for that. Yeah.
Other questions or comments before we move to internships?
Amazing. This is
Yeah.
amazing.
A lot of work.
Looks like the Enigma machine.
Well, the irony is you have a fully colorblind superintendent who made that, so. When you hover over the dot and you just poke red, I have to wait till the word red shows up, and then I have to choose it, so it's a little problematic for me, but, all right, let me shift us to our, internship, and I will blow this up for everybody. So, and school committee has a copy of this in your drive. So, again, this was some work that we put together after looking at multiple schools in the North Shore and the Merrimack Valley, actually, to take a look at what some of the best practices in programming are. We think we've, done a relatively decent job providing our students with internships, but Amy and I, for almost 2 years, or a year and a half, have had conversations about the quality of the internship, the monitoring of the internship, this philosophy that Amy just talked about, our actual practical application where seniors basically check out every day, or a majority of them, for half a day. They're basically leaving the building for half a year. So I had kind of heart palpitations around time on learning, and what that would look like in an audit, which I hate to say, but that was a real thought of mine. The second thought is that culture of, if we are asking teachers and faculty to build really good, robust, authentic electives in their subject areas, but then we also say to them, sorry, this entire group of kids is gone, and they all can't take these great classes. We're not setting kids up for college and career in the same way that we should be. So a lot of schools have this model where there's a culminating experience, almost like, a lot of schools call it their capstone experience, right? That capstone experience at the end, and they make it a really deep, robust 6, 7, 8 week experience for kids. And so we've taken that experience and then added on the concept of shadow days in the junior and senior year, which also comes from some other districts that have added this. So basically, this is a 2-year program intended to provide juniors and seniors with opportunities to really do some real-world experience through internships or community service. So there'll be 3 shadow days, a 6-week internship, and then presentations and exhibition, all wrapped up to demonstrate their growth. So in their junior year, they'll participate in, starting in the junior year, they'll participate in 3 shadow days, one in the first semester of the junior year, one in the second semester of the junior year, one in the first semester of their senior year. And that means they can go out and explore in the same field area. So if you have a kid who's passionate about engineering and they have a connection that someone's helped them make, they can go out 3 shadow days, one in each semester with the same place. Or if they're sort of that kid that doesn't really know, and the data shows that more and more kids go off to college undeclared, or get to college and switch 7 times, or have 6 majors and 2 minors, and then they graduate and get a job that they didn't get a degree in anyway. That just seems to be the world we're living in right now, unless they're a very focused particular student in a certain area. So we're giving them an opportunity to shadow in a variety of places and build relationships with people out in different workforces. Then after those are complete, during the last 6 weeks of school, which is their 4th term for seniors, so roughly, April 1st to May 17th, or wherever that falls, they'll have the option to participate either in an internship or a community service experience. And so we've broken that out into 2 boxes. So it's basically the equivalent of 30 hours per week for the last 6 weeks of school. So it's like going to work for a 6-hour day. Instead of an 8-hour day, under the supervision of a site mentor. The internship students need to spend the majority of their time on site, but because of the world we live in, there is going to be options for flexibility and some kind of asynchronous support depending on the industry. And our students who are more community service, nonprofit minded, they could go in that direction, and similarly to a nonprofit or volunteer organization for 30 hours a week for 6 weeks. And they have to spend at least half of the hours on site because that kind of work often disseminates and, it gets split up in different directions. So some of the requirements for this program, will there be a more formal time log and experience journal? They're going to have required check-ins, so Amy's going to identify an internship coordinator who's going to help us manage this, who's going to be in charge of building connections in the greater community for internships, reaching out to Rotary,
Greater Cape Ann
thank
Chamber.
you,
Yeah.
Greater Cape Ann Chamber of Commerce, and a couple of these other organizations to really help. When we talked about partnerships when I first came into the district, we want to really leverage some of those partnerships, and we have some already in place that we want to strengthen. So that person will be there for that, and we'll also do check-ins every other week. So this is, one every other week, the student won't do the 30 hours, that one of those hours or hour and a half will come back to the program, and the students will basically come back to a classroom setting, and they'll check in with their logs, they'll do some share out with their peers, talk about what their experience is like. They'll get their experience journals and logs checked over and discussed, and then at the end, there'll be they'll create a deliverable that summarizes their experience in a presentation format, and then our real ultimate hope is we kind of have, like, instead of a job fair, we have like an internship exhibition where we ask all of the site managers to come in, and we kind of put ourselves on display and show these students what it, like when you go out to a job fair, what that might look like and how you put your work samples together. Maybe we do resume building and interview skills in that model as well. We're still start teasing that out a little bit. And the bullets step us through some of the questions around process, right? This is, you're representing the school. This is a leap of faith that we're giving our developing young adults. So we recognize that, students have to be in good standing in general to participate in this. Seniors, the way it works in schools that do this is the final grades for a full year course are the average of the first 3 terms. And if you're in a semester 2 course, it gets finalized at the end of term 3, and that's where everything gets cut off. That gives teachers time to plan and make sure that the curriculum is put together and condensed for the seniors. If you're in an advanced placement or dual enrollment, then there has to be caveats there because those extend all the way through. So what happens with those students is they do 5 less hours in the model and they come back to school. There are students who take AP, teachers in the room don't get mad at me, but there are some students that take AP senior year and actually don't take the AP exam. So if they don't take the AP exam, then they can be released at the end of the 3rd term as well. But those students who have to take the AP exam or in dual enrollment will continue all the way through. And it will be an assessment on a pass-fail system with a rubric. And then we know that this is kind of in combination with all the work that Amy's school's already doing. So they're already doing career exploration work and readiness work with the school counselors, annual junior and senior college and career planning events. They participate in the career fair. They partner with Greater Cape Ann Educational and Advancement Fair at Gloucester High School. So we feel like this put together with all of the activities that we're already doing and with a point person sort of overseeing it is really going to strengthen the program and from my perspective, build a consistent level of internship experience for students. To me, that's an important piece to this. So I will stop and.
So I would imagine, are there guardrails in place for, often we're aspirational and assuming for high achieving students, this is one more piece of their experience. For children who are struggling to make it to the finish line, are there guardrails in place so that this whole internship component doesn't become the last straw that
So it's not.
takes them out?
Yeah, so it's not a requirement.
Okay.
Right, it's not a requirement. They have the opportunity to do this. In the schools that I've observed, the greater majority of seniors take advantage of it. Some students, it doesn't meet their learning need or their academic need. Some families just say, no, listen, my kid just needs to put his head down and do the work. Either they're at the upper level or the lower level or somewhere in the middle of that learning spectrum. And so the hope is you offer it, and as many students as would like to take advantage of it, take advantage of it. And in my observational experiences, and honestly, in my experience as a parent, the greater majority of seniors usually do it, particularly in year 2, 3, and 4, once you've really built strong relationships and the kids coming up learn about it from the other kids.
Right.
If you asked a current senior or someone who graduated about this model, I'll give you the real social answer. Be like, oh, that's terrible. Right now I get to leave school every day. Well, that's not an academic answer, really. That's a social answer. We're really trying to make it a connection between academia and work.
The other thing it does do, just to add though, for the fourth quarter, it does give us time to do remediation work with any of the seniors who are at risk for not graduating, because probably many people on this committee know the way that our current structure works. Sometimes it comes down to like the day before graduation with students really like not passing, one of the required classes with a 64 or something like that. And of course they always have opportunities to make up that work, but they lose the opportunity to walk at our graduation ceremony is historically been the way it works at Rockport. So I think that this does give us some time to build in if students are struggling and need remediation, then perhaps they're not doing an internship and they're staying back to get their coursework that they need so that they can graduate on time and earn that diploma. It's just another caveat.
Can I, so by having, this is great. I think that making it sort of more standardized is really great. The person who's sort of the coordinator of this, will that person then, there'll be maybe more help in getting internships for students? Because that's been kind of one of a concern I know, is that like if you know someone or if your parents know someone, you might have a really great internship, and if you don't have those connections, you don't get one. So that person will help with.
Yes, so a part of having the coordinator, which would be a teacher that would not be teaching a certain block or 2 blocks, depending on, how much time we can give that person, would really be dedicated to meeting with the students in advance, getting the internship set up at the community level, helping to pair with them so that they understand what to do, doing the pre-work of building a resume, and, all of those skill-based things that sometimes aren't able to happen just because of staffing. And also then if there are senior teachers, and again, we'll be visiting other schools who are currently using this model, so we don't have it all 100% ironed out, but I know different schools use like the senior teachers too, not only in advance, but then that third quarter, if they're not teaching as many sections, like they're really involved with making sure that they're going out to on-site visits with the students, making sure every student has a good placement, working with the site coordinators at the placements, building that portfolio for the expo at the end. So, there's more hands-on opportunities just because you have more staff to dedicate to that purpose.
Yeah, I was going to ask the same thing, sort of. I think the success of this program depends on having those authentic connections between what the academic and that real life experience. If it's authentic and valuable, this program is incredible, like absolutely amazing. Yeah. So I think it so much just depends on having those connections, especially for those students like you were alluding to that don't have somebody or something already lined up for them. But so you kind of answered my question about how that program was going to run. It sounds like it's a teacher that would have less duties. Yeah.
And we can come back too with that, once we iron out, we were presenting this in preliminary format tonight. We still have a lot of work to do to iron out, the logistics of who will be, how it will be. I'll be working on master scheduling over the next month or two. So once we have that in place, I think it would be nice to have that person come back and present on some of their research and their commitment to it, because again, having the right person in that spot and having some leadership within that realm, I think will be essential.
Is there going to be some criteria for students that they like? I guess who determines kind of what is going to be a valuable experience for those students? So that's the
conversation we're going to have once there's somebody in place. Is we'll start to talk about and again, you have to be careful when you start to assign value, or I hate to use the term robust, but like the robustness of an internship, right? Because there are some students.
It'll be different for everybody.
There are students who are going to go out and do a landscaping work as their internship, and it is absolutely the best internship for that particular child. And there are others who are going to go into Gloucester and work in a hospital, right? And so what we need to make sure is that the internship matches when you're talking about college,
Absolutely.
career, and service readiness to prepare our kids after 18 years old, that it matches. And I also like to push the bar a little bit, right? So yes, you can do this internship, but have you thought of an extension of that internship with, a related company or something like that? Many of our students work right now. There have been a lot of questions in other districts around getting paid for internships, and the general answer is that it cannot be a paid position that the student already has. So if the student currently works at X as their part-time job, they can't just go, "Oh, here you go, I got an internship." But if they happen to connect with an organization and do an internship, and that company says to us, "We have a bucket, either on a philanthropic side or a budgetary side, that supports paid internships," we're not going to get in the way of that either. And similarly, the community service industry does that sometimes as well.
With community service, is that a graduation requirement still to do a certain number of community service hours from
Yes.
9 through 12?
Yes, and we haven't talked about yet, like, if this would count for that. I mean, that would be a
Right.
huge shift because we require 50 hours over the
Right.
course of 4 years.
Right.
So we wouldn't want, I think, this to be like, oh, you don't have to do
Right.
anything until you're a
Correct.
senior, and then you can
Yeah.
do all 30. So I think we'd have to build in that when we work with the person who's going to lead it and manage it and just make some, guidelines around that. We haven't quite gotten there yet. But
The
we have no
community's-
plans to take away the community service.
No, and this community service title really is kind of a catch-all for the nonprofit space, volunteer organization space, kind of that less, I don't want to say less formal business, but it's
Yeah.
outside the private sector, I guess
And
is
they'd
the
be
way I
getting
would put that.
credits for that, so it
Right.
wouldn't really qualify for what we consider
Correct.
community service
Correct.
anyway, because they
Correct.
are getting something for it. They're not doing it for,
Correct.
out of the pure goodness of their hearts, so.
So as Amy said, I think once we have identified a particular faculty member, and once the leadership at the high school and that faculty member have had time to work with people like the guidance department and others in the community to kind of put this together, I think then somebody will come back to us with some kind of formal presentation or like the more deeper version of this.
I have an equity question on behalf of students with disabilities who may need to be in the building all the way to the last day to meet IEP goals. What does this look like for a student with an IEP?
So we do it now. And I think that's a conversation at the table early, no different than any other thing. If a parent sits in the room when the kid's a sophomore or the junior and they say, listen, by the time we hit senior year, we're hoping the kid can stay in the band or do X or take this English class or whatever. The team works through that, and so I would suspect that as we start to front load this kind of a program in the meeting, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, particularly when the 3-year reviews come up. But you can make those changes during annual review as well, so. And there will be some students, for a variety of reasons, who you could modify an internship, right? This says you have to have 30 hours a week. Just the IEP could be written, or we could just have an articulated agreement with a family and a child that you do 15 hours a week. Or you come back every day for that 1 hour of service, and then you go back out.
Yeah, and I think this class is gonna be a great class to pilot it with, because it is really small. We actually have bigger classes coming, so it's not the predictive of the future, but it is a really abnormally small class. Like, they think there's only 40 students total in that class. So I think it will allow us a really good opportunity to customize it and see what each student needs and see how many, even when I presented it to the students briefly at the last assembly, there were a couple questions, like, what if we don't want to, be done with our senior year, April 1st, we want to stay. It's like, that's true. We're not going to totally kick you out. We're going to make opportunities so that you can stay. It is optional. But it's just a matter of knowing that in advance so that we can make sure we have the staffing and the teachers are prepared to teach the sections, and we're prepared to have the internship coordinator know what they're working with. So we'll be doing a lot of legwork on that over the next couple months.
Thank you.
Yeah, looks really good. So that brings us to program of studies up.
So I will stop and kick this whole thing to Principal Rose now. This is the exact, I feel like this is the same format we used last year because it went over well in this room. So I will scroll as you
Sure.
step us through if that's the easiest way to do this.
So instead of, you always have access to the entire program of studies. It's on our website, so you can feel free to peruse that at your leisure. But we did just go through and put in this document anything that was new. That's just not new, just a highlight of the graduation requirements, and then our programs and partnerships. These are not really new from last year. Some of them were new last year, like Project Lead the Way. And some of the agreements between the colleges just always shift and change. Like even the North Shore articulation agreements really just change from year to year, but we kept them in there because they're always an opportunity to exist. So it just really depends on how we can offer and what we can offer in terms of dual enrollment and articulation agreements. But we've had some great success with those. We wanted to highlight those. I think that was feedback from school committee before, where there was a lot of things that we had been doing for years, but they weren't maybe necessarily advertised in a way that the community knew about them. So putting them clearly in the program of studies has been something we've been working towards. So if you scroll through, I guess the biggest
yeah.
change beyond the Project Lead the Way classes that we're going to continue to offer is reframing our business department. So we've had business offerings in the past, but in the past we've had business offerings under the umbrella of social studies. And so what we've done this year is really taken our offerings and made it its own unique business department, which can be a combination of social studies or math. And the math and social studies departments have done a great job of working together to kind of see what makes sense for each of them to teach and take on, knowing that on any given year, it may be one year I have a math teacher, and so a math teacher may step in and do accounting and economics, but the next year I have, a really big class of sophomores that I need 3 sections of geometry, and so I don't have that person. I'm going to put a social studies person. So they've really been working together on what we can offer that kind of could swing from year to year and utilize those staff members and professionals in the best way possible with the numbers that we have. So within the business department, and again, we haven't put a note on those that this is a math class and this is a social studies. It's just its own unique business class. We have accounting, economics, marketing 1, marketing 2, and money smart. Especially with an emphasis on the financial literacy push from the state and certain things, we want to make sure that we have those offerings for
It was
our
just in the
students.
Boston Globe about a month
Yeah.
ago, 5 weeks ago, this huge article about the push for financial literacy, personal finance. There's a real push, again, that the state's trying to get every high school student to take at least one course in personal finance. So that Money Smart course is really our model that we're going to try to build to meet that expectation. And over time, we'll have to figure out what other high schools are also trying to figure out, is how do you build a rotation that, theoretically requires that every kid graduates from your high school at least cycling through that one class.
And we even talked about taking the strengths of, both departments and saying there's
Yep.
a business portion of this class, and then that's complemented with all the financial aspects, and a math teacher can jump in and really hone in on that maybe a little with the different skill set than a social studies teacher can. And so there's been a lot of talk about making it more of a partnership, which I think the kids will really enjoy and will serve to make sure that we're utilizing the staff in the best way possible as well. When it comes to English, I know this has been a topic of discussion here in terms of how we're going to be doing senior English. This year we did, just because we had a retirement very, very late in this season and in June, we sort of just did a general English 12 that we customized. Next year, with the feedback of the English department, who have been amazing, we're going to take specific electives that they've sought feedback that the kids may be interested in. So we have creative writing, speech and debate, the graphic novel, young adult fiction from Neverland to Narnia, and then AP literature. And so students can select based on interest, and that will count as their senior English, and they will have the option to take it at either the honors or CP level. Likely be a combined class because of numbers, but they will have the opportunity to take those classes at the honors or CP level. In math, we have a new project management class, which is going to focus on students really being able to pick, have a choice in the projects and things that they're interested in. I want to buy a home. I want to start a business. I want to go into the community and research an economic development project that I'm really interested in, and take that project from start to finish, and how that can evolve over time, both mathematically, but also from a business perspective. So that's something the teacher who's designing it is really excited about and passionate about, which is always good. We have, with the addition of Tom Smoker, when Patty Pike had retired and Tom came in, he sort of walked into some of the offerings that we had there, and he's done an amazing job but they've had some new energy around like, what could we do with the staffing that we've had? He is full-time, so that gives us a little more leverage than we had when Patty was here, more part-time. So they're going to be adding a songwriting and production 1 and 2 and a theater workshop class, which may even be able to, depending on the numbers and the staffing, but be co-taught at some points in time with Denise Ferrazzi, who does our current acting classes and does our theater, and Tom does our music, so maybe some music theater classes, which I think the kids will really like if we can pull that off. So those are new. The Project Lead the Way courses, I left the ones that we had in there, so they're not brand new this year, or next year, they're new this year, but we do have a new edition of Principles of Engineering. So we had Intro to Engineering, and Principles of Engineering is the second phase of it. So the students that took Intro this year needed a place to go next year. That is that natural next step. And what's not on here, but should be noted, is that we're also adding 3 Project Lead the Way courses to the middle school. So it's not in the high school program of studies, but Jody, who is here behind me, spent the day on Project Lead the Way today on a site visit with the middle school and high school, and how we're going to really start to build that so that it's a 6 through 12 experience, and we'll be implementing those 3 new courses at the middle school next
If you don't
year.
mind taking a breath, I want to give some credit on some of this stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's super important. So
Please.
the Project Lead the Way work, and I know Jody's on the hook for a curriculum overview presentation to the committee soon. But Jody has really taken the lead on grant acquisition and the district connection with Project Lead the Way. Amy and I stayed in communication with the rep to kind of set the foundational direction, and then Jody's really run with the application and meeting with the teachers, going out on site visits today. And this concept of setting up like a JV program we talked about this last year, and I think we said at this table going through a tough budget cycle last year, which, we apparently did again this year, with our fingers crossed, saying, let's really hope we can move the district forward and continue this work, because the worst thing you can do is offer an intro class and not offer the second class, or the worst thing you can do is have, similar to our Spanish situation, have some good programming at high school, but no feeder system for it. You wouldn't offer a varsity soccer program without a JV program or a rec program. And so we really feel like we purposefully built this from the top down, which is opposite of how you normally do program development, but we did it so that our current high school kids last year and this year can have it. And now we're trying to backfill it, and that's a harder way to do it. And so, I thank Amy and Jody, and I thank the teachers who are giving up time to read, to do PD, to go out and do this work. And I think that's important. I think just to double back on some of these project management offerings, the English department really trying to be creative about offering opportunities for kids to have choice and voice. That is super, super important as our kids become young adults and start to lean into their skill sets, their knowledge bases, their potential college and career readiness, right? So my own son is a good example. He figured out early on, junior year, what his lean was, and then this new schedule and these new offerings will allow kids to decide, hey, if I want to be a history kid, or I want to be a science kid, or an English kid, or a music kid, I can double and triple up in those areas now. The schedule allows for that, having a good mix of teachers who are collaborative and cooperative around the development of shared experiences, either co-taught or shared courses. That's going to allow kids who have a lean developing to pursue that lean. And the counter to that is that typical student who doesn't still has this really good menu of offerings, so that when they come out, they've just had that much broader experience to say, listen, I can't pick something yet, but I've tried a lot of stuff on. And I think we have to serve both types of students when we talk about college and career readiness. So I thank the people behind the scenes doing all this work. I know you have more in this document, but I wanted to get out before I forget it.
No, we do. And I need a breath. So AP Chemistry is another science elective that we currently do not have that we will offer next year, just given the skill set of our chemistry teacher has taught AP Chemistry in the past. She taught AP Physics. She's teaching AP Physics 2 this year, just because Aiden, when he took over Intro to Physics for all freshmen, couldn't teach like 17 blocks in the day. And she's happy to teach anything, but we are putting it out as an option just to see if students want to take it. So again, as with every year, it'll depend on who wants it, how many recommendations and requests that we get, but it is out there as an option right now to our students. And then with the social studies, again, this is a revolving elective option that was highlighted in the program of studies last year. So this is just sort of, hopefully, should be what we said we were going to do last year, because what we had done last year was try to say, instead of, so each year with the program of studies, what we've always done, but again, maybe haven't given ourselves enough credit for, is looked at the offerings and said, okay, we're going to offer all these, and then next year we may not offer them because students have taken them and maybe there's not as much interest, so we'll offer different ones. But what would happen is if people were looking at the program of studies, depending on the year, they may be like, how come you don't offer sociology? It seems like something you should offer. Well, we're not offering it this year, but we offered it last year. So what we tried to do was put a 2-year cycle so that parents and students could see, okay, well, we don't offer it this year, but I know it's going to be offered next year, so I'm going to take these 3, knowing that I can take this one next year. So in the cycle for this coming year, we have the history of Rome, from ancient to modern. We have sociology, we have Holocaust and human behavior, foundations of law, foundations of criminal justice, and art of war, on top of what some of our social studies teachers will also be teaching the business classes. And then students will know that next year, in 2025-26, we'll have psychology, the 1960s, world history through film, Greek mythology, conflicts in modern world, and U.S. history through film. And a lot of that is just making sure we're cycling through, because there's a small group of kids. So if a lot of kids took psychology this year, which they are, then there's just not as many that want to take it next year because they just took it. But then you'll have the freshmen and sophomores who will want to take it by the time they get to junior.
And we really pushed the social studies department a year ago to think this way on purpose, and we think that other departments, can learn from this model as well. So that transparency of rotation is, again, really important. If your kid has a lean in this particular subject area, now they see a pathway. And you say with your parents and your guidance counselor, like, geez, I got to take Soc this year because it's in the rotation this year. And so if I want to take 4 or 5 of this particular domain's classes over time, I know that there's a 2-year rotation. We feel like this is a good model that they're using, and we'll have conversations with other departments about whether it makes sense in other departments or not. But again, the English department took it in the other direction with that elective model as a senior, which is a really cool opportunity for our upper class kids at the end. That's the end of it, right? So questions, comments, thoughts on, it's so nice to talk about teaching and learning tonight.
Are there any other disciplines besides English that have honors and CP classes taught together?
So the world languages have always sort of done that, and more they're doing it. They did it this year with the freshmen, and there are mostly our electives do that. If you're going to take a business elective or anything like that, we've had a lot of conversations about that. Just being a small school, we might not necessarily be able to say we're going to have an honors level of accounting and a CP level of accounting, so we're going to have to kind of be flexible with giving students that opportunity to earn that credit if they're willing to be more independent and do some of the extra work. So it's not unheard of. There are definitely other classes, and sometimes we have to do it even with numbers. So there'll be times like in U.S. history, for example, grade 11, not necessarily grade 10, but grade 11, because like if you have a small class and you have AP U.S. history and you have U.S. history and honors U.S. history, sometimes you don't have enough to run sections. So sometimes we've had to do that.
And I think when we talk about high expectations, as a parent and a teacher, I would rather set the bar high, particularly for high school kids, but this is true for all learners, but I'd rather set the bar high and see if they can jump over it. So I have no issue philosophically as an educator or a dad saying, listen, if push comes to shove, we're going to offer the upper level of it. And we're gonna work to get the kids to jump over the bar. And even in larger high schools, there are some schools where they just offer AP, and the cut line for honors is simply you don't take the AP exam. And everybody gets the robust content. So I know that that's a deep discussion philosophically and practically for educators. I'm well aware that statement is easy to say and hard to do, but it is actually not that unique. And we are not that unique sometimes even though we think we are. We happen to be small, but we have very similar needs to push kids higher and to push the achievement further. And I would argue, now that I've been here for a little while, I think it's even more important for our kids who are on this island to to push as hard as we can to make sure they're college and career competitive when they get off of the island.
Yeah, I think the concern you often hear from parents is actually the opposite, that somehow the honors class won't be as challenging if CP is in.
They're going to work in the same office building in 5 years. They're going to be in the same college classes in 2 years. It's almost offensive to me sometimes when we participate in those conversations. So raise the bar for all. I'm very passionate about it, and I'll say it publicly.
Well, this looks great. I mean, it's really nice to see some of the threads that you've heard about for years in terms of students who want to go into nursing, but not having the component pieces to get there. It's really coming together, so thank you for all that hard work.
Thank you for listening for a long time. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of work by great teachers and great leaders, and a lot of hard work by students, and student input, and the schedule. So I'm excited for next year. Hopeful. We'll see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
CIPC Planning Committee update.
So, Amy and Michael were on this call with me and June last night. If you recall, we came to the committee sometime in October to go through our original capital requests, which included the completion of the blind replacements across the district. And I'll slow down on some of this to remind us that that was directly tied to our safety and security measures, right? As I've said on multiple meetings, that blinds feel like a nicety in a home, maybe, but in a school, it's really part of our comprehensive safety and security plan. We just had lockdown drills today. And the police department actually walked around the perimeter of both buildings, and I'm embarrassed to report that the superintendent's office blinds were not closed. So I got the check mark. So this being on here is not just us kind of doing a beautification project. There's real intent to some of this work. We had originally asked for the second year completion of the carpet removal and tile replacement at the elementary school. We proposed some HVAC upgrades in offices and other common space work areas. We had talked about a third multifunction school activity bus, now that we have our second one replaced. We had passed pictures around of the electric multi-purpose vehicle, and we had talked about the cafeteria tables that are definitely at the end of life, with many of them being sent on a regular basis to the DPW for welding work. So that original ask totaled about $320,000. Since that meeting, we've had some other concerns. Elementary students in G Wing, which I believe is kindergarten and pre-K, is that correct? And grade 1, kindergarten, pre-K, and some grade 1, very cold classrooms. So I think I've said this in other meetings, but just to reiterate it for us and the public, that our system is actually in the middle high school, and it's the system for the whole campus. So it pushes underground into the elementary school, under where my office is, and that is the farthest point on campus away from that system. So the hot water's getting there, but all of those units are just not pulling the heat in, and they were cold, 55, 61 degrees. I mean, there were some cold kids in there and cold teachers in there, and we can't do it again. So we've changed our priorities. We've got quotes to take care of the UV conversion. Also, after working with the town, we've identified, I think the town is identifying fire alarm system concerns in many of the municipal buildings, and the schools are not alone in that. So we've had to do some fire alarm system replacement, data collection as well. So as a result, we've elected to defer the HVAC upgrades and the electric multi-purpose vehicle in order to put these two on the list. And then this, what you have in front of you here, is the final approved list that CIPC approved at their meeting on February 12th. Board of Selectmen then approved on the 15th. And just last night, we presented to FinCom. They did not take a vote of approval, if I recall correctly. They will come back to their next meeting to finalize it. So that includes 8 to 9 classrooms, having the univentilators replaced. It includes the campus fire alarm system. The computer board specifically is what is at end of life. That needs to be replaced. Continue the blind replacements. And CIPC partially funded the carpet removal and tile replacement for an approval of almost $176,000 out of a total of $1 million of proposed free cash. So the original ask was $320. The approved ask is $176. Unapproved requests gently used multifunction activity bus gets sort of tabled. No pun intended, the cafeteria tables get tabled. We'll talk about that for a second, because and then the partial fund of the carpet removal and tile replacements. That third bullet, we did get a price, Mr. Chair, on a 2-year project. So it's going to be difficult for us to go back to the vendor who gave us a price point contingent on a 2-year project to say, sorry. That will change the price point, change the timeline, and really put us in a bad situation at the elementary school, because it just will have incomplete sections of flooring, and we'll continue to have carpet issues where we shouldn't have those issues. So, Town Administrator Vera and I have had conversations offline already about, once budgets settle, $17,000 in the big scheme of the town budget might not be a giant amount of money necessarily, and, will we be able to find that to make that fully funded? He has always been good to work with in those kind of gap-filling areas. I am concerned about the cafeteria tables. Again, I think some people look at cafeteria tables as a nicety. We have 3 lunches a day, cycling through 183 days with 400-something kids going through there, and many of them aren't safe. Our staff members are actually, they say they got bit by the table. The way that they're functioning now, they have to be careful. And so I'm concerned about that $50,000 not being available. I don't have an answer to you. I'm just sort of reporting out at this point in time.
I'm concerned as well, but it is an opportunity to think really hard about what the furniture ought to look like in that room, and whether round tables with attached stools are what you would choose if you could wave your magic wand and money were no object. You mentioned when you go out and you look at new schools, you see a wide array of furniture, and it's too bad it's not funded, but it also maybe is a chance to look a little longer. Maybe.
It's part of the issue too, that room is really like a multi-purpose room, so you're looking at something that you can move quick. Is that true?
Yes,
Like you're
and-
looking at something that you can move.
Yeah, and the
then
tables,
move
the
back.
tables that were selected were actually selected for financial purposes and practical purposes. 1, quick movement; 2, circles over rectangles, so you can do collaborative work. It is a PD room. It is a public room. We're working with Monty and the tech department to really come up with an appropriately sized video setup in that room, because that's also a PD room. I think about how we just had a town meeting in the auditorium recently, right, in the Performing Arts Center, and if we had that place AV'd out, that would be overflow. People could go in there and you could watch everything appropriately. So potential to leverage a conversation with the town side about that being a shared space too. So so that's sort of where we are on the capital ask at this time.
I know I've asked in the past about having a time where select board or FinCom can come and tour the school with you. How about the capital improvement planning committee? Do they come into the school, and have they put eyes on those tables and seen what they actually look like? Or is this just a paper request that they're approving or denying?
Can't answer that formally. I don't know.
Because I wonder if we invited them in and they saw
Yeah.
I think that's a
those,
nice idea.
it might, I wonder if it would maybe make a difference.
Yeah, and I want to be careful. Like, I think, if the town has $1 million of proposed free cash, I understand, because we were in the room when all the other departments ask, right? So the police department needs capital, improvements, and so does the fire department and all of the other municipalities and entities within the town. So I don't think it's an easy decision for the team to make, and to decide. And when you look at what we are getting, heat for little kids and teachers over cafeteria tables is an easy decision. So is your fire alarm system. Actually, so is the blind replacement, because it attaches to our safety and security. So I am not here reporting disagreement necessarily. I'm reporting fact, and a little bit of leadership frustration around not being able to actually get it done. But we are where we are on that. But to your point, yeah, I think it's important. I mean, they are clearly at the end of life, and we're fixing them and taking some out of play, and it's going to be problematic. And now we're going to have more kids in 3 lunches, and I'd like the furniture not to be the driving reason that Amy and her staff have to move people to other locations. So,
Okay.
good.
Yes. Superintendent goals update. It's that time of year.
Well, I can't even find them on here now. Hold, please. So what I gave you towards the middle or end of last week is the goal document that I submitted, and then in the boxes is the evidence, progress evidence. Some is hyperlinked and some is just narrative. So I don't know that I need to step everybody through everything, but I don't mind, just skimming through. When it comes to the end of year summative, I think there was conversations with and without me about the difficulty of, knowing what's complete and what's not complete sometimes. And so my goal here throughout this year, I think so much of this work has been disseminated here, that my hope is in year 2 that's easier for you to see and be able to write authentically about the evidence. And where I think you can't do it, I'll continue to keep this document live and try to do some hyperlinks so that everybody has some good evidence. This one, I think when I put this one out there, I got feedback from you all about, the size of the bite, so to speak. So, when we talk about this work, but it's sort of work that had to be done in the district, right? And so I say as many times as I can, I don't do any of this alone. There's teams of people sitting in rooms with me to do all this work all the time, but clearly our negotiations are in progress. The policy review is well underway at this time, and with the strong partnered leadership of Principal Rose and our other colleagues in the middle school, high school, that transition is moving forward. The NSEP and my mentor, Chris McGrath, it's been a fascinating program to be in. I'm in year 2. I never miss a session, and that's not because I'm compliant as much as I feel like it's therapy. I feel like I need it, and I need to get in there with the other year 2 superintendents, and I need to get, in the work and really talk about what we're all going through as a group. It's a small club. There's 235 or 240 superintendents in the Commonwealth, and we know that the life expectancy. We know what the turnover rate is, 4 to 5 years average in the state, and many of us would like to survive longer than that. I think, me being part of these organizations at the state level and having someone like Chris McGrath sit there, week in and week out with me as a sounding board and a mentor has been really strong for my professional growth. So I thank the organization. I thank you for supporting that. And I thank Chris for supporting me. And then this other one was my professional practice. I know you know a little bit of what I'm involved in and not involved in, but I've been heavily involved for a couple of years now in the MASS. I'm a member of the Professional Development Committee for the Mass Association of School Superintendents. It ties to my original doctoral work in professional development, so I stay passionate and connected to that. And part of that is that team that I'm on, we work on and develop and approve the online PD programming for assistant superintendents and superintendents. We review all the RFPs for the conferences, we select the keynote speakers, we review the vendors, plan the logistics, so I'm heavily involved in a lot of that work, and take a lot from that work that I can bring back to the district to work with Amy on what our professional development models look like and how we're meeting the needs of our teachers. Gone out to multiple conferences, as you can see on here this year. I continue to teach as an adjunct professor in SNHU's doctoral program, currently teaching applied research. I've served on multiple comprehensive exam committees, and I have chaired and been a member of multiple dissertation committees at this time for the university. Some of you came to MASC where I was a panel member for implementing a new high-quality literacy curriculum, and I enjoyed my time doing that. And I am currently writing a conference presentation with a good friend of mine who was also a fine arts professional who became a superintendent, called "So You Think You Want to Be a Principal? Why Would You Want to Be a Principal?" So we know that while we have a teacher shortage issue across the country, in particular Massachusetts, we also have a leadership issue. And it's tough to fill the bench. And it's tough to get people to commit to being educational leaders in the particular climate that we live in this country. So I think it's incumbent upon those of us who are doing the work to make sure we're fostering growth as well. And then just a couple unrelated things is, we continue to redesign the district leadership team. It included our middle school, high school assistant principal this year, did some good work on the website. There were more updates recently with faculty profiles that you can see now if you click on the faculty tabs. We continue with Principal Rose's work to keep our district professional development plan iterative and live, so you can go on that website at any time and see all of the work we're doing transparently. And that's also true about our district curriculum council work. If you now go to the teaching and learning page, Jody's done a ton of work with content leaders, teacher curriculum leaders, to frame the work in a transparent way, and we successfully developed our budget book this year. So that's the fast version of this 3/4 of the year for me.
I mean, I think part of what the synopsis shows is it's been a really ambitious agenda for the past 2 years, because it's really involved fundamental changes to our district that are transformative, and with that comes, I'm sure, an exhausting and challenging time for the staff that you're supervising, and that comes with a lot of interpersonal challenges as well, because it's just a lot to take on. So I think it's impressive, but it's also impressive that, you know, comparing this to something like SMART goals, I mean, I think you've really tricked it out so you can see what the goal is. It's collaborative, it's moving forward, it's got a timeline, and then we get actual tangible results. And, you know, and on top of that, there are the usual day-to-day challenges, budgeting concerns. So I think it's an impressive span of activity in the first 2 years of your superintendency, and I think it really speaks well to the staff as well, where you couldn't do any of this without a lot of tremendous support and a lot of pushing down of empowerment to that staff. So I'm sure it hasn't been easy, and I'm sure it hasn't been easy for the staff, because change is difficult, but I think I speak for us all, where we're very appreciative, because these changes make the district viable on an ongoing basis. And it's only 3/4 of the way through.
I know, huh? We got work to do. We still have work to do.
Plenty more time, yeah. We'll bring in the flying cars next. So there's no finance update
No, I feel like
tonight.
4 meetings in a row has been finance, so I think we're okay
we've
tonight.
kind of lived it. Is there any walk-on school committee discussion that anyone wanted to pull in? Because I think we do have a need for executive session for the purposes of contract negotiation updates. So this would be the point that I would, if there's no walk-on items, ask for a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of contract negotiation, and we won't be deciding anything after that, so we'll be exiting from the general meeting through the executive session. So do I have a,
So moved.
Seconded.
right, and then we have to have a voice call vote to go into it.
Lorenz, yes?
Riley, yes.
Kelly, yes?
Valtieri, yes.
Oh, yes.
Good night,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
much.
Come in.
Thanks for coming. Thanks, Amy.